Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Coach Gene Clemens here with another video. I am talking recruiting and I am talking big news. I don't know if any of you know it, but the landscape has changed for college recruiting and how these young men in high school are going to have to navigate this new landscape. You need to know what you're dealing with if you want to be successful. And thanks once again to Coach Prime, who inadvertently gave us the blueprint on what many colleges are probably thinking right now by giving us some insight into what he's thinking. If you don't know what I'm talking about an interview that Coach Prime did on the Rich Eisen show just a few days ago, where he talked about his 40-40-20 recruiting model. I don't want to put words or try to give you a synopsis of what he said. So we'll go directly to what Coach Prime said when he was speaking to Rich Eisen about this new situation.
We recruited some guys. I have 40-40-20, Rich. That's my formula. 40% grad transfers, 40% in the portal, 20% high school. And
so just there, we can hear him say it. We don't have to try to figure out what he's saying. He's telling you right there, I have 40-40-20. That is 40 in grad transfers, 40 in the transfer portal, 20 in high school. Well, I did the numbers for you to kind of let you know how this broke down at that level. Jackson State is an FCS school, which means they only have 63 scholarships. At the FCS level, they have 63 scholarships. Now, if you're saying you're going to have a 40-40-20 model, 40% for graduate transfers, 40% for the transfer portal, and 20% for high school, it already tells you that if you're a high school student, you're coming up on the low end of his priority. You're coming on the low end of the priority. Now, how do we navigate it? We have to understand what every level means. First, let's start with the first 40% graduate transfers. That means that 25 scholarships are going to be designated for grad transfers. 25 scholarships for guys who they're essentially going to turn over every single year, because most grad transfers, when they transfer, they have 1 year left to play. Now, you may have a couple of people who graduated early or who redshirted, and so then they may have 2 years left. But for the most part, these people have 1 year left, which means that Coach Prime and his staff are looking to turn over 25 of those guys every single year. Now, we're working rough numbers because even though we understand that there are 63 scholarships, we know that the team has more than 63 players on it. So some of those scholarships may be broken up depending upon aid and need and how they're able to hustle. But just for the sake of understanding how the numbers work, I want to just give it on the account that we're going to give every kid a full scholarship, or every young man a full scholarship. So 25 players are going to have to be replaced every single year, and they're planning to, not every single year, they're going to have to be replaced that only have 1 year to actually play. So that might be every single year replacing 25, or it might be somewhere around 15 to 16 every single year, depending upon how they come in and layer in with the team. The other 40% are 25 scholarships that are going to kids in the transfer portal. Now, this is where Coach Prime and his staff really have to hit it out the park, because you're getting these graduate transfers in, you're getting these transfer portal kids in who have that one time to be able to transfer without sitting out. So you want to get a kid in who you believe, or a young man in who you believe can play right now, that may play for you for the next 2 to 4 years. So if that young man went to one school and was a freshman and redshirted, they didn't play, they could transfer to Jackson State and have 4 straight years to play. After that, you're talking about 3 or 2. Normally, you wouldn't see a kid with 1 year of eligibility go into the transfer portal, because that would usually mean they've been at the school long enough to be somewhere close to a degree. You see what I'm saying? So normally, if you're talking about transfer portal kids, you're going to have kids or young men that have anywhere between 2 and 4 years to be able to play. That is where they have to knock it out of the park, because with those 2 to 4 year guys, that's going to make up the majority of the guys who are going to play for them for multiple years, along with the last piece, which is the 13 scholarships for high schools. So if it's 25 for grad transfers and there's 25 in the transfer portal, that means there are only 13 scholarships left to scholarship high school kids. Now, you know that a young man comes into school and you have to assume that that young man is going to stay for 4 or 5 years, which means when you break down what this actually equates to is 3 to 4 high school recruits per year. So there may be a lot of us that have been sitting around and going, okay, well, if Coach Prime and these other schools care so much about recruiting better, then why are they not recruiting more of our kids? We don't see a whole lot of them. That's because they're not. They're not. Their focus is on getting college players. That's where 80% of their scholarship budget is going. It's towards college players to get grown men in to compete against other grown men. This is the model, or probably this is probably the model that Coach Snyder at Kansas State has used for many years to stay competitive when he was zigging while everybody else was zagging. But that means what Coach Prime should be able to do is he can go big game hunting with his high school recruits. And you saw it this year when they signed the number 1 recruit in the nation. But think about it. If they signed him, you may only actually see 2 or 3 more high school signings for Jackson State. Because if we're holding Coach Prime to his word that 40-40-20, when you get 1 recruit to sign, that's 25% of the scholarships that you have to dedicate to high school kids. Well, what do you mean? Well, you have to think about the 13 on a roster, right? So when you hear 63 scholarships, you can't assume that 63 scholarships are given out every single year to a new 63. No, every year the players who leave, either because they graduated, we hope, or because they decided to go somewhere else and continue their college careers, those are the only scholarships that they have left. And they're going to replenish those scholarships with the requisite numbers within those columns. So let's say they have 20 scholarships, right? 16 of those scholarships are going to graduate transfers and transfer portal kids. 4 of them are going to go to the high school kid. 40, 40, 20. 20% of, you get what I'm saying? So these coaches may not be sleeping on you as a recruit. These coaches may not be missing you as a recruit. They may very well see all the potential that you have, but they have a model that they've decided to work with. And what I appreciate Coach Prime about is he's put this out there to be seen. So now it allows you and I to be able to work to give this information to others. Because if you think that Coach Prime is doing something unique, you're fooling yourself. Michigan State made a meteoric rise, or at least got back to a respectable level because of the transfer portal. You've seen other teams be able to buoy themselves because of the transfer portal. This is not going to stop. As these coaching staffs begin to understand how to navigate the transfer portal better, as it becomes fertile ground, because now these kids who picked the original school based off of what would get the most clicks, what would get the most headlines, are now having to go, this isn't the school for me. I need to find the right school for me. There are all of these teams out there with open arms. So you've got to appreciate what Coach Prime did. You have to understand he's trying to let you go into this with your eyes wide open. And that's something that we haven't seen a lot of coaches, a lot of coaches do. They don't want to tell you how the hot dogs are made because they don't want you to understand that it's cold game out there. But you as a high school recruit, you have to understand this model. If there are 63 scholarships at the FCS level, then 50 of them are going to guys who are already in college. Only 13 of them are going to you. Now extrapolate that to the FBS level where there are more scholarships. If you're thinking about like Alabama or Georgia or the big brands, they're probably still going to be taking more high school kids. Why? Because they can. But if you're somebody that's looking to compete right now, if you're somebody that's looking to elevate quickly, you may not be able to afford to bring in a recruiting class full of 18 and 19-year-olds. But a recruiting class full of 20 and 20-year-olds may get you closer to competing faster. But because you do that, you have to continue doing that. The only way to get out of that is to change the model. And by changing the model, that means you have to take a step back to allow that new model to work. So if you think that at some point this is going to level out and it'll go back to the way it used to be, it's not going to happen. It's never going back to the way that it used to be. This is the new normal, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a high school kid that plays any athletics, but especially if they play football, let them know of this is new, and start preparing them as such. Hey, we might have to have the thought process of going to school, getting our feet wet in school, putting good film in, and then hitting the transfer portal to really maximize whatever potential that we may have, because this is the new way. It might take you having to turn down offers from programs that have more prestige or may get more eyeballs because you know in your heart of heart that that's not the place for you, because trying to go and navigate that transfer portal is going to be really difficult. But knowing this information, knowing this new 40-40-20 recruiting model that Coach Prime has, and I'm pretty sure that other coaches are out there doing some type of adjustment of this model. If you're asking me what I would have, it would probably be something similar to this, except it wouldn't be so heavy on the graduate transfers because those are just 1 year. But I would probably have something like a 20-40-40 model where I look to have 40% come from the transfer portal, 40% come from high school, and 20% come from graduate transfers. But you still have to remember that's still not what it used to be. When you used to look at a recruiting class before this new normal, when you looked at a recruiting class, that recruiting class was full of young men that came from high school. So you would see 20 and 25 high school recruits going to Alabama, 20 and 25 high school recruits going to Georgia, going to Florida, Florida State. That meant that more high school kids got an opportunity to do what? You guessed it. Get scholarships from these bigger name schools. Well, if we're no longer bringing in 25, if now we're bringing in 15, there's less kids, right? It's less kids. It's just something that you want to be able to think about. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments on this. What do you think? Do you think Coach Prime's recruiting model of 40-40-20 is legit? Do you like my recruiting model of a 20-40-40? Do you think that's legit? What would you do? How are you going to navigate this if you have a young man or a young woman that plays sports? What are your thought processes on these new normals? Is there anything that the NCAA should do in order to alleviate some of this so that these high school kids are not having it so difficult to find homes? I want to hear from all of you on everything. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. There'll be more videos like this coming because I want to be able to share that information with you. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. We're heading towards 3,000. We want you to be in a number. Until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Y'all have a fantastic one.